Hello and welcome to this video on the procurement processes within Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. We're going to start the process with a requisition, and the requisition is going to go through a workflow approval process. After that, once approved, the requisition will become a purchase order, and the purchase order process will then go through a receiving action, and then there'll be an invoice and a matching process to tie the invoice to the receipt, three-way matching in our example, and then there'll be a supplier payment process on the back of that invoice. So we're just going to start from the requisition perspective, and you can enter a requisition a number of ways if you're a requester. So we could, if we were using the employee self-service portal, for example, workspace as these tiles are called, we could have a requisition tile in here and go and look at requisitions and create a new one from this place. We could also put this requisition in fact on pretty much any page or tile here. So there's a workspace here that I've created called property, and in here I've got some links to requisitions, so my requisitions and all requisitions. So anywhere you can get to, or you can use the favorites and the standard module navigation to get to that process. So let's just go in from a requisition list here, and I'm going to create a new requisition, and I'm going to call this special training. And obviously we've got a date here. I could specify a project if I was using project management, and I could specify a buying legal entity, but at the moment I'm just going to say OK to this to create our requisition. And now we have a header and some basic information. I can also have a justification, a reason why I might want to request this particular piece of training. We need more training. It does have a spell checker, which is useful. Please. And at this point I'm going to add some lines. So this is around what I want to purchase, and I've got a number of options here. So I can add services, I can add products, I can punch out I can bring in external catalogs from a supplier if I want to. And what I'm actually going to do is use a procurement category in this case. So procurement categories are very useful because we can control which categories users can see, depending on what they should see, i.e. certain categories of people could buy IT equipment but others couldn't. And so we've got a hierarchical list here as well, so you can control the hierarchies and the level of detail to which you go. In this case, we're going to ask for some staff training, because that's what we want, is some additional training, and it's just let's say HSE training, health and safety, HSE training in this case. A quantity in here, and it's a training day. It could be a course, it could be a number of hours, and I happen to know that the cost of this is going to be £650 in GBP. Now, at this case, I could put a supplier on the requisition, but I'm not going to do that because I'm not sure who we should be purchasing this from. So I'm going to let the purchaser and my manager decide that. So actually, I'm happy with this requisition as it stands at the moment. I could put an attachment on here. I could add extra notes if I want to give some sort of further justification to this process. But what I need to do now is submit this for approval. You'll see also just down here as a point to note that I've got an operating unit down here. This is the unit that I belong to as an employee. You can buy things on behalf of other units, of course, and the legal entity, again, it's defaulted from my legal entity. So let's submit this for approval. So we go up to workflow, and we just have a button here at this point called submit, and what I'm going to do is press the submit button, and the workflow process is going to start. Workflow is very flexible. I could put an extra comment on here if I want to, but I'm not going to. Workflow is very flexible. We can set it up to do approvals in parallel or in series, and also based on pretty much any criteria on here, we can route it in a certain direction. Now you'll see the status has changed to in review. This means the workflow process is in progress. And also, if I go up to this button here, you'll see that I could recall the workflow if I wanted to start again, make a change. I can also check on the history. So let's just go and do that and see where we are. Now at the moment, we've just done a submission. So the workflow process runs in the background on a scheduled basis. This one's scheduled to run every minute or so. And so at some point within that minute, the workflow process will pick up my submission or any other submissions that have been made, and it will start to carry out that process. And depending on, say, who needs to do the approval, it will route it to that approval or that approver group. And you'll see here now that the status is pending, and we have some workflow in progress. What I'm going to do now is go to just going to duplicate the tab basically and go to my desktop, and as you'll see here, I've got a message saying there's a message, and also you can see here down on the work items assigned to me, I've got a purchase requisition. So let's go and have a look at this. I am now the person who's been asked to look at this, and I can see that Nick's given us a purchase requisition here. I can go and have a look at the details. And it's some HSE training, £650. Yeah, that's okay, and we can accept that or we can reject it. We have different actions here we can take, and we can complete, reject, request a change, or delegate. Look at the history and recall. On this one, I'm going to complete it, and we could put a comment back on here if we want to, or not. And now you can see it's gone off my list of workflow actions to check. Okay, so back in here, we've got our original process, our original requisition, I should say. And what I'm going to do is just click this folder here to refresh. This button here to refresh, and you'll see in a moment the status will change, and I will have an updated requisition. This takes a minute to run. And at this point, we've got a second level of approval. This is something that we just wanted to show. So we have what we have is a request to spending limit. So not only do we have this workflow approval, we can also, on a request to setup, set a spending limit. And £650 is above my limit. So although the request for the training has actually been approved at my manager level, actually this is more than I have authority to purchase. So at this point, again, there can be another approval process or a rejection process, depending on how the workflow is configured. So I am going to, as an approver, approve this one, and then once again we will see that there is a workflow history in here, and again I can just refresh the screen, and then I will see that the final approval will have happened on this purchase requisition. And at once that final approval has gone through, then the update will happen to the status here, and it will become an approved requisition. So let's just go in and refresh that one. and now it's approved. So we've gone through the approval process. What you can do in a workflow is set up for approved requisitions to actually automatically create purchase orders. In order for that to happen, there would have needed to be a supplier account put on this requisition as well. And you can have default supplier accounts for different procurement categories. Okay, so our requisition is now approved. And what we're going to do is go to our favorites menu here, and we're going to go and have a look at the purchase requisitions, release the approved purchase requisitions. So this is a screen which shows everything which has been approved, and we have one here. This is our HSE training, so imagine we're somebody approving this. We can consolidate these opportunities into one purchase order. So let's say there were 4 or 5 requests from the same supplier. We could consolidate those. But in this case, what I'm going to do is create a new purchase order directly off the requisition. Now, at this point, I do need a supplier account because we can't have a purchase order without one of those. And so we're going to suggest a supplier, which in this case is going to be Octagon Training Services, which is who we usually use for our training. And I'm going to say yes to this. And at this point, we have created a purchase order. When the process goes through, and then in the second video in this series, I'm just going to show you how we process a purchase order onwards, and then how we do the receiving, invoicing, and payment. Thank you.